Dr. Sarah Chen pressed her face against the reinforced glass of the observation deck, watching the ceremony below with growing disgust. The grand arena of Draconis Prime stretched out beneath her, filled with thousands of dragonkind gathered for the annual flame testing. Young dragons, their scales still soft and bright, stood in neat rows while the Elder Council evaluated their fire-breathing abilities. "Another failure," muttered General Corax, the massive red dragon who served as the colony's military commander. His voice carried easily through the arena's acoustics, meant to ensure everyone heard the judgments. "Spark production minimal. Flame duration 3 seconds. Classification defective." Sarah's hands clenched into fists as she watched a small silver dragon, no bigger than a house cat, stumble backward from the testing platform. The little creature's attempt at breathing fire had produced nothing but a few pathetic sparks that died before they hit the ground. Around him, other young dragons snickered and whispered cruel comments. "Useless," one of them hissed. "My grandmother breathes better fire than that, and she's been dead for 50 years. The silver dragon's head drooped lower with each insult. Sarah had been observing the dragon colonies for 6 months now as part of the interspecies cultural exchange program, but she had never seen anything like this systematic humiliation. On Earth, they called it bullying. Here on Draconis Prime, they called it maintaining standards. "Next candidate," Corax bellowed, "present yourself for evaluation." But the small silver dragon remained frozen on the platform, his whole body trembling. The testing apparatus, a series of targets designed to measure flame intensity and accuracy, loomed over him like mechanical predators. Sarah could see tears forming in the creature's large, amber eyes. "I said next," Corax roared, his own flames shooting 30 feet into the air for emphasis. "Remove this defective specimen and bring forward a dragon worthy of evaluation." 2 larger dragons moved toward the platform, clearly intending to physically drag the small silver away. Sarah had seen enough. She activated her personal communicator and spoke directly to the colony's administration. "This is Dr. Chen requesting immediate intervention under Article 7 of the Interspecies Protection Protocol," she said, her voice steady despite her anger. "I'm observing what appears to be systematic abuse of a minor during a cultural ceremony." The response crackled through her earpiece immediately. "Dr. Chen, you are advised not to interfere with internal dragon colony affairs. Your role is observation only." "My role is to ensure the safety and dignity of all sentient beings under the treaty," Sarah shot back. "I'm going down there." Before anyone could stop her, Sarah activated the emergency transport system and materialized directly on the arena floor. The sudden appearance of a human in the sacred testing ground sent shocked murmurs through the crowd. Dragons reared back in surprise, their various colored scales catching the artificial sunlight that illuminated the dome. "What is the meaning of this?" General Corax demanded, his massive form casting a shadow over Sarah as he approached. "Humans are not permitted in the testing arena during sacred ceremonies." Sarah stood her ground, though she barely reached the height of Corax's knee. "I'm here under the authority of the Interspecies Protection Protocol. This child is being subjected to psychological abuse." A wave of scandalized roars erupted from the dragon audience. The concept of a human, a species without wings, without natural weapons, without fire, daring to question dragon tradition was almost incomprehensible to them. "Abuse," Corax's laugh was like the sound of boulders grinding together. "We are simply identifying this creature's capabilities. He has no flame, no strength, no value to our society. Better he learns this truth now than waste our resources later." Sarah walked past the general and knelt beside the trembling silver dragon. Up close, she could see he was even smaller than she had thought, probably equivalent to a 6- or 7-year-old human child. His scales, which had looked silver from a distance, actually held hints of blue and purple that shifted like oil on water when he moved. "Hey there," she said softly, extending her hand palm up in the universal gesture of non-aggression. "What's your name?" The little dragon looked up at her with wide, frightened eyes. "Zix," he whispered, so quietly she had to strain to hear him. "My name is Zix." "Well, Zix, I'm Sarah. I think you're pretty remarkable just as you are." This statement caused such an uproar in the arena that several dragons actually took flight, circling overhead and roaring their displeasure. The idea that someone could be valuable without meeting dragon standards was revolutionary and deeply offensive to most of the gathered crowd. Remarkable, General Corax descended toward them, his claws scraping against the stone floor. This creature cannot produce flame. In our society, that makes him less than worthless. He consumes resources without contributing anything of value. Sarah stood up, placing herself protectively between Corax and Zix. Your society's definitions are narrow and cruel. Intelligence, creativity, compassion, problem-solving ability, these are also forms of strength. You're so focused on fire that you're blind to other gifts. Gifts, another voice joined the conversation. Elder Pyritha, the oldest dragon on the council, landed nearby with a thud that shook the ground. Her ancient scales were deep purple, almost black, and her eyes held the cold wisdom of centuries. Human, you speak of things you do not understand. Fire is life. Fire is power. Fire is the essence of what makes us dragon. Without it, this creature is merely an elaborate lizard. The crowd cheered at this pronouncement, but Sarah noticed something they missed. When Elder Pyritha had called Zix an elaborate lizard, the small dragon's eyes had flashed with something other than fear. For just a moment, there had been anger there. Intelligence, pride. Zix, Sarah said, ignoring the crowd and focusing entirely on the small dragon. Can you understand what I'm saying? He nodded, his movements quick and nervous. Are you smarter than they think you are? Another nod, this one more definite. Do you have abilities they haven't recognized? Zix glanced around nervously at the gathered dragons, then looked back at Sarah. Slowly, he nodded again. Sarah smiled. Would you like to come with me? I have a research station where we could explore what you're really capable of. The arena erupted in chaos. Dragons roared, Elder Council members argued, and General Corax actually breathed a warning flame over Sarah's head. But through it all, Sarah kept her eyes on Zix, waiting for his answer. The small dragon looked around at the crowd of his own kind, all of whom viewed him as worthless, defective, a waste of resources. Then he looked at Sarah, the strange, wingless creature who had seen something in him that his own people had missed. Yes, he whispered, please. Sarah activated her emergency beacon. Transport for 2 to Research Station Alpha. Priority authorization Chen 77 Blue. Dr. Chen, came the response through her communicator. Removing a dragon citizen from their homeworld requires extensive paperwork and council approval. Then start the paperwork, Sarah replied. I'm invoking emergency custody under the Child Protection Act. This individual is in immediate psychological danger. General Corax stepped forward threateningly. You cannot simply steal one of our citizens, human. Worthless or not, he belongs to our colony. He's not property, Sarah said firmly. He's a sentient being with the right to choose his own path. Zix, do you want to stay here or come with me? The small dragon looked around the arena one more time. Not a single dragon in the crowd showed him anything but contempt. The testing apparatus still loomed over the platform, waiting to measure abilities he didn't possess by standards he could never meet. I want to go with you, Zix said, his voice stronger now. The transport beam activated, and Sarah felt the familiar tingling sensation as the molecular displacement field began to take effect. She reached down and gently scooped Zix into her arms, surprised by how light he was. His scales were warm against her hands, and she could feel his tiny heart beating rapidly with fear and excitement. This is not over, human, General Corax warned as they began to fade from view. That creature will disappoint you just as he has disappointed us. Dragons without fire are abominations. We'll see about that, Sarah replied, and then they were gone. Research Station Alpha materialized around them, a sterile but comfortable environment designed for interspecies study and cooperation. Sarah had spent months making it feel as welcoming as possible, with soft lighting, varied temperature zones, and spaces designed for creatures of different sizes and needs. Zix looked around in wonder. Everything here was built to accommodate different species equally. There were perches for flying creatures, pools for aquatic beings, and cushioned areas for those who preferred ground-level comfort. No single species' needs were prioritized over others. Welcome to your new home, Sarah said, setting Zix down on a soft platform designed for small creatures. For as long as you want to stay. It's so quiet, Zix whispered. No one is shouting about fire or strength or worthiness. Sarah laughed softly. That's because worth isn't determined by a single ability here. We believe every intelligent being has value. She pulled up a chair to bring herself closer to Zix's level. Now, tell me about these abilities your people haven't recognized. Zix hesitated, clearly uncertain whether he could trust this strange human who had rescued him from humiliation. But something in Sarah's patient expression encouraged him to continue. I can feel things, he said slowly. Metal things, I know how they work, how they're made, how to fix them or make them better. When I touch mechanical objects, I understand their purpose immediately. Sarah's eyebrows rose. That's fascinating, can you show me? Zix nodded eagerly and looked around the room. His gaze settled on Sarah's tablet computer, which she had left on a nearby desk. May I? Of course. Zix hopped down from his platform and approached the tablet. The moment his claws touched the device, his eyes widened. Oh, he breathed. It's beautiful, all these pathways for information, all these connections, but there's a flaw in the processing matrix. The cooling system isn't efficient enough for optimal performance. Sarah stared at him. That tablet has been running slower than usual lately. How could you possibly know about the cooling system? I can feel it, Zix explained, his confidence growing as he spoke. The electrons, the heat buildup, the way the components interact with each other. Your device is working at about 70% efficiency because of thermal constraints. Could you fix it? Zix tilted his head thoughtfully. I think so, but I would need some tools and maybe some better materials for heat dissipation. Sarah was quiet for a long moment, processing what she had just witnessed. Then she smiled broadly. Zix, I think your people have made a terrible mistake. You're not defective, you're extraordinary. For the first time since she had met him, Zix smiled back. It was a small, hesitant expression, but it transformed his entire face. Really? Really, and I think it's time we showed the galaxy just how extraordinary you are. Over the following days, Sarah provided Zix with access to her research station's workshop, a room filled with various technologies and tools from different species. She watched in amazement as the small dragon examined each device with careful attention, immediately identifying its function and often suggesting improvements. When Zix touched a Centauri crystal matrix, he instantly understood how to increase its energy output by 30%. When he examined a Vulcarian gravity manipulator, he found a design flaw that had been causing random failures for decades. Most remarkably, when Sarah showed him a broken piece of dragon technology, a communication device from his own world, Zix was able to repair and enhance it within hours. Your people are brilliant engineers, Sarah observed as Zix finished calibrating the communication device. But they're so focused on biological abilities that they've completely overlooked technological gifts. Dragons believe that relying on technology is weakness, Zix explained, carefully adjusting a crystal component with his claws. True strength comes from fire, flight, and physical power. Technology is viewed as a crutch for inferior species. That's incredibly short-sighted, Sarah muttered. Some of the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy have succeeded precisely because they embraced technology instead of limiting themselves to biological capabilities. Zix looked up from his work. What do you mean? Sarah activated her wall display, showing images of various alien civilizations. The Andromedan Collective has no natural weapons, but they've created defensive systems that make them nearly invulnerable. The silicon-based life forms of Kepler 430, 8b have no physical bodies as we understand them, but they've built computational networks that span entire star systems. The Aquatic Federation can't survive outside water naturally, but they've engineered environmental suits that let them explore any world in the galaxy. They all overcame their limitations through technology, Zix said slowly, beginning to understand. Exactly, and more than that, they turned their supposed weaknesses into advantages. The Andromedans' lack of aggression made them natural diplomats. The Silicon beings' distributed consciousness allows them to process information in ways organic minds can't match. The Aquatic Federation's need for environmental suits led them to become the galaxy's best engineers for hostile environments. Zix stared at the images on the screen, seeing for the first time civilizations that had thrived without conforming to a single standard of biological perfection. My people don't know about any of this, do they? Dragon colonies are notoriously isolationist, Sarah confirmed. They rarely engage with the broader galactic community because they believe their way of life is superior to everyone else's. But it's not, Zix whispered, and for the first time his voice held certainty instead of doubt. No, Sarah agreed. It's just different, and difference when embraced properly becomes strength. That night, as Zix slept curled up on the heated platform Sarah had prepared for him, she filed her preliminary report with the Interspecies Cultural Exchange Program. Her findings were revolutionary. The dragon colonies were systematically discarding individuals who possessed rare technological intuition, gifts that could benefit not only dragon society, but the entire galaxy. More importantly, she was beginning to suspect that Zix wasn't unique. If the dragons were casting out everyone who didn't meet their narrow standards, how many other gifted individuals were being lost? How many potential innovators, engineers, and problem solvers were being labeled as defective and abandoned? Sarah made a decision that would change everything. She opened a communication channel to the Galactic Council and began composing a message that would challenge everything the galaxy thought it knew about dragon civilization. Council members, she began, I am writing to inform you of a significant discovery regarding the dragon colonies and to formally request an investigation into their educational and social practices. I have evidence that they are systematically discriminating against individuals with extraordinary technological abilities. As she wrote, Sarah could hear Zix shifting in his sleep, occasionally making small chirping sounds that might have been dreams. She wondered what he was dreaming about. Perhaps for the first time in his life, they were good dreams. Tomorrow, she would begin the process that would not only vindicate Zix, but potentially transform dragon society forever. The galaxy was about to learn that the dragons had been throwing away their greatest treasures, mistaking gifts for flaws. But first, there was work to be done. Sarah had promised Zix that she would help him develop his abilities, and she intended to keep that promise. She had a feeling that the small dragon sleeping peacefully nearby was going to surprise everyone, including himself. 6 months later, Sarah barely recognized the small dragon who had once trembled on the testing platform of Draconis Prime. Zix had grown slightly, his scales now gleaming with health and confidence, but the real change was in his demeanor. Where once he had cowered and whispered, he now moved with purpose and spoke with quiet authority about subjects that fascinated him. The harmonic resonance frequency is completely wrong, Zix muttered, his claws dancing across the holographic interface of the quantum computer he was rebuilding. No wonder the Aldebaran scientists couldn't get stable quantum entanglement. They're fighting against the natural oscillation patterns instead of working with them. Sarah watched from across the workshop, marveling at how naturally Zix had taken to advanced physics and engineering. What had started as simple mechanical intuition had blossomed into something far more extraordinary. The young dragon didn't just understand technology, he could perceive the fundamental forces that made it work. The Aldebarans have been trying to solve that problem for 3 years, Sarah pointed out. Their top scientists believe it's mathematically impossible. Zix looked up from his work, his amber eyes bright with excitement. That's because they're approaching it like mathematicians instead of feeling it like engineers. Mathematics describes what happens, but engineering feels why it happens. He gestured to the floating equations surrounding the computer core. Look, they've got all the calculations correct, but they're missing the intuitive understanding of how quantum fields want to behave. Show me, Sarah said, activating her recording device. Over the past months, she had documented hundreds of Zix's innovations, creating a portfolio that was attracting attention from scientists across the galaxy. Zix's claws moved through the holographic display, shifting variables and adjusting parameters with movements that looked more like dancing than calculating. Here, he said, highlighting a section of the quantum field equations. The Aldebarans are trying to force the entangled particles to maintain connection across vast distances by overpowering the natural decay. But that's like trying to hold water by squeezing it harder. What's the alternative? Instead of fighting the decay, you work with it, Zix explained, his voice taking on the patient tone he used when describing complex concepts. You create a resonance cascade that actually uses the quantum field fluctuations to strengthen the entanglement instead of weakening it. Like this. The holographic display shifted as Zix implemented his modifications. The chaotic, unstable patterns that had plagued the Aldebaran design suddenly smoothed into elegant, flowing cycles. The quantum entanglement, which had previously lasted only microseconds, stabilized and strengthened. Sarah stared at the display in disbelief. Zix, You just solved one of the most challenging problems in quantum engineering. The Aldebarans will want to give you every scientific honor they have." Zix's response was interrupted by an urgent chime from the station's communication system. Sarah activated the main display, expecting a routine message from the Research Council. Instead, she found herself facing the imposing form of General Corax, his red scales gleaming with anger. "Dr. Chen," the Dragon General growled, "I demand the immediate return of the stolen dragon under your protection." "Stolen?" Sarah's voice remained calm, though she could feel her temper rising. "Zix chose to come with me. He's free to leave whenever he wants." "The creature has no right to choose," Corax replied dismissively. "Defective dragons are the property of the colony until they reach the age of accountability. You have kidnapped a child." Zix, who had been quietly listening from his position near the quantum computer, suddenly straightened. His voice, when he spoke, held none of the trembling uncertainty Sarah remembered from their first meeting. "I am not defective," he said clearly, "and I am not property." General Corax's attention shifted to Zix, and his expression became one of contempt mixed with surprise. "The creature speaks with confidence now. The human has taught you arrogance to go with your uselessness." "The human has taught me to recognize my own worth," Zix replied evenly. "Something you and the others never bothered to do." "Worth," Corax's laugh was harsh. "Show me your fire, little one. Demonstrate your flame, and I will acknowledge your worth." Zix hopped down from his work platform and walked calmly to the center of the room, directly in front of the communication display. "I cannot breathe fire," he said simply, "but I can do this." The young dragon placed his claws on the nearest control panel, and suddenly every system in the research station began operating with impossible efficiency. The lights brightened, but used less energy. The atmospheric processors doubled their output while reducing their power consumption. The quantum computer Zix had been working on integrated seamlessly with the station's main network, increasing processing power by orders of magnitude. "I can make any technology work better than it was designed to," Zix continued, his voice steady and proud. "I can solve engineering problems that have stumped entire civilizations. I can look at any mechanical system and immediately understand how to improve it." He paused, meeting General Corax's stunned gaze through the display. "I may not breathe fire, but I can reshape the galaxy." The communication channel remained silent for long moments. When Corax finally spoke, his voice held uncertainty for the first time Sarah had ever heard. This is some human trick. Dragons do not possess such abilities." "Actually," Sarah interjected, "I think dragons might possess these abilities more often than you realize. You've just been throwing away everyone who demonstrates them." She activated her research files, displaying months of data on dragon society and the fate of dragons who failed the flame testing. "Zix isn't unique. According to your own records, approximately 8% of young dragons show little to no flame production. All of them are classified as defective and either exiled or relegated to menial tasks." "Because they are defective," Corax insisted, though his voice lacked its earlier conviction. "Or because they represent a different evolutionary path," Sarah countered. "General, I've been studying dragon genetics with the help of several galactic research institutions. We've discovered something remarkable." The display shifted to show complex genetic analyses and evolutionary projections. Dragons appear to be developing along two distinct paths: the traditional fire-breathing ability that your society values, and a new technological intuition that allows direct interface with mechanical and electronic systems. Both traits are advancing, but they appear to be mutually exclusive. "You're suggesting evolution is creating two types of dragons?" Corax asked slowly. "I'm suggesting that evolution is adapting your species for survival in a galaxy increasingly dominated by technology," Sarah explained. "Fire-breathing dragons are superb warriors and can thrive in harsh environments. Technology-intuitive dragons can interface with and improve any mechanical system they encounter. Both abilities are valuable, but you're only recognizing one." Zix stepped forward again. "General Corax, may I ask you something?" The large dragon's attention returned to him. "Speak. How many problems does Draconis Prime currently face that can't be solved with fire?" Corax was quiet for a moment. "What do you mean?" "The atmospheric processors that keep the dome habitable, the food synthesis systems that feed the colony, the communication networks that connect you to other worlds. The transportation systems that move people and goods efficiently. Zix's voice grew stronger with each example. All of these systems are technological, not biological. When they malfunction, fire can't fix them. We have maintenance contracts with other species for such needs, Corax replied stiffly. At tremendous expense and with complete dependence on outsiders, Sarah added. Your colony spends 40% of its resources on technological support that a few technology-intuitive dragons could provide for free. The implications of this statement clearly struck home. Corax's expression shifted from anger to thoughtful concern. Are you saying that the creatures we exile could solve our technological dependence? I'm saying that the beings you exile could make Draconis Prime the most technologically advanced dragon colony in the galaxy, Sarah replied. Zix has already improved every system on this research station. Given access to your colony's infrastructure, he could probably increase efficiency across every technological system you use. Zix nodded enthusiastically. The atmospheric processors alone could be improved by at least 30% efficiency. I could feel their operational patterns through the communication link. They're running with suboptimal harmonic frequencies and inefficient power distribution. For the first time in their conversation, General Corax looked genuinely surprised. You could improve the atmospheric processors from here. I can feel the resonance patterns through any connected system, Zix explained. Technology speaks to me the way flame speaks to you. It's a different language, but just as natural. Sarah watched the general's expression carefully, seeing the exact moment when military pragmatism overcame cultural prejudice. A leader's first responsibility was to protect and strengthen their people, and Corax was beginning to understand that he had been throwing away potential assets. Demonstrate, Corax commanded. Show me these improvements you claim to offer. Zix looked to Sarah, who nodded encouragingly. The young dragon approached the communication console and placed his claws on the interface controls. I'll need a direct link to your atmospheric systems. The connection will have to be voluntary from your end. After a moment's hesitation, General Corax authorized the link. Immediately, Zix's expression changed, becoming distant and focused as he perceived the technological systems of his homeworld for the first time. Oh, he whispered, his voice filled with dismay. Oh, this is terrible. Your systems are so inefficient, so poorly calibrated. It's like trying to fly with broken wings. His claws began moving across the interface, making minute adjustments to distant systems. On the display, Sarah could see real-time data from Draconis Prime showing immediate improvements in atmospheric processing, power distribution, and environmental controls. Atmospheric efficiency up 12% and climbing, Zix reported, his voice taking on the clinical tone he used when deep in technological interface. Power consumption down 8%. Environmental stability increased across all measured parameters. General Corax stared at the scrolling data displays in shocked silence. In less than 5 minutes, a dragon he had dismissed as worthless had improved the life support systems that kept 60,000 dragons alive and comfortable. This is impossible, he muttered. This is just the beginning, Zix replied, his eyes still distant as he worked. I can feel dozens of systems that need attention. Your transportation grid is running at 60% efficiency. Your communication networks are vulnerable to cascade failures. Your food synthesis systems are contaminating nutritional content due to improper molecular calibration. Can you fix all of these problems? Zix looked up from the interface, meeting the general's gaze directly. I can fix every technological problem your colony has, and I can teach others like me to do the same. But I need your people to stop seeing technology-intuitive dragons as defects and start seeing them as resources. The communication channel fell silent again as General Corax processed this information. Sarah could almost see the calculations running through his mind. The cost savings, the technological independence, the competitive advantages that a population of technology-intuitive dragons could provide. There would need to be conditions, he said finally. The Colony Council would never accept such radical changes without proof of long-term benefits. What kind of conditions? Sarah asked. A trial period, 3 months. The creature, Zix, would return to Draconis Prime and demonstrate these abilities under controlled circumstances. If the improvements prove sustainable and beneficial, we would consider revising our evaluation standards. Sarah looked at Zix, who had gone very quiet. "It's your choice," she said softly. "You don't have to go back if you don't want to." Zix was silent for a long moment, contemplating a return to the world that had rejected and humiliated him. But when he spoke, his voice held determination. "I want to go back," he said. "Not for them, but for all the others like me who are still being told they're worthless." "There could be other technology-intuitive dragons still on Draconis Prime," Sarah asked. "Of course," Zix replied. "They just don't know what they are yet. They're probably hiding their abilities, trying desperately to produce flame instead of exploring what they can really do." General Corax's expression had shifted to something approaching respect. "You would return, knowing how you were treated to help others." "I would return because of how I was treated," Zix corrected. "No dragon should have to feel worthless because they have different gifts." "Very well," Corax decided. "I will propose the trial period to the Colony Council. But understand, young one, that you will face skepticism and hostility from many dragons who view this as an attack on our traditions." "I'm not attacking your traditions," Zix replied calmly. "I'm expanding them." As the communication ended, Sarah felt a mixture of pride and anxiety. Zix had grown so much in confidence and ability, but returning to Draconis Prime would test him in ways that laboratory work never could. He would be facing not just technical challenges, but the social and political resistance of an entire culture. "Are you sure about this?" she asked quietly. Zix nodded, his expression determined but peaceful. "For the first time in my life, I know exactly what I'm supposed to do." Sarah smiled, remembering the terrified little dragon who had trembled on the testing platform just months ago. That dragon was gone, replaced by someone who understood his own worth and was ready to fight for the worth of others. "Then let's get you ready to change the world." 2 years had passed since Zix returned to Draconis Prime, and the transformation was nothing short of miraculous. Sarah stood in the observation deck once again, but this time she was watching a very different kind of ceremony. The grand arena had been converted into a technological showcase, where young dragons demonstrated abilities that had once been considered shameful defects. "Presenting candidate Flux," announced Elder Pyritha, her ancient voice carrying new notes of wonder and pride. "Specialization, quantum field manipulation." A small blue dragon, no larger than Zix had been during his original testing, stepped onto the platform. Instead of the intimidating flame-testing apparatus, the stage now featured sophisticated holographic displays and interface panels designed specifically for technology-intuitive dragons. Flux approached the quantum field generator with calm confidence, placing her claws on the control interface. Immediately, the chaotic energy patterns displayed on the screens began organizing themselves into elegant, stable configurations. The power output doubled, then tripled, as Flux optimized the system with intuitive understanding that had taken the galaxy's best scientists decades to develop. The crowd erupted in cheers. Where once such a display would have been met with disgust and rejection, the dragons now roared their approval. Sarah smiled, remembering how impossible this transformation had seemed just 2 years ago. "Remarkable control," General Corax observed from the judge's platform. The massive red dragon wore a collar of technological enhancement that had been designed by Zix himself, allowing the general to interface directly with the colony's defense systems. "Candidate Flux demonstrates exceptional potential for our engineering core." Sarah's attention was drawn to movement in the arena's central area, where Zix was working with a team of technology-intuitive dragons on the latest expansion project. No longer the tiny, trembling creature she had rescued, he had grown into a confident leader whose innovations had revolutionized not just Draconis Prime, but dragon society across 17 colonies. "Sarah," a familiar voice called behind her. She turned to see Dr. Kellex approaching, the Centaurian scientist's crystalline features glowing with excitement. "The Galactic Council has reached their decision regarding your proposal." "And," Sarah asked, though she suspected she knew the answer from Kellex's enthusiasm. "The Dragon Integration Protocol has been approved unanimously," Kellex announced. "Every major galactic civilization is requesting technology-intuitive dragons for their engineering and research programs. The waiting list is already over 3 years long." Sarah nodded, feeling a deep satisfaction. What had begun as a rescue mission for one rejected dragon had evolved into a transformation of galactic society itself. Technology-intuitive dragons were now recognized as one of the most valuable resources in known space, their unique abilities solving problems that had stumped other species for generations. There's more, Kellex continued. The Council has also approved funding for the establishment of 50 new research stations specifically designed for interspecies technological development. They want you to head the program. That's wonderful, Sarah replied, but you should be making this offer to Zix, not me. He's the one who proved what technology-intuitive dragons could accomplish. Actually, Kellex said with what passed for a smile among his people, he specifically recommended you for the position. He said, and I quote, Sarah doesn't just understand technology, she understands potential. Sarah felt a warm glow of pride at the compliment. She looked down at the arena, where Zix was now demonstrating a new transportation system to a group of fascinated dragon engineers. His success had exceeded her wildest dreams, but more importantly, he had found his purpose and his confidence. Dr. Chen, another voice interrupted her thoughts. She turned to see a young dragon approaching, his scales a deep emerald green with golden highlights. She recognized him as Torix, one of the dragons who had mocked Zix during his original flame testing. Torix, Sarah acknowledged neutrally. She wasn't sure how to feel about dragons who had participated in Zix's humiliation, now wanting to associate with his success. I wanted to apologize, Torix said, his voice heavy with genuine remorse, and to thank you. Apologize to Zix, not me, Sarah replied. I wasn't the one you hurt. I have apologized to him, Torix said quietly. Many times, he's forgiven me more than I deserve. The young dragon paused, struggling with his next words. But I needed to apologize to you too because you saw value in him when none of us could. You saved him from us. Sarah studied Torix's expression, seeing genuine regret and growth. What changed your mind? Everything, Torix replied simply. The improvements to our colony, the respect we now receive from other species, the opportunities opening up for all dragons, not just the flame-gifted. He gestured toward the arena, where dragons with various technological specializations were working together on projects that would have been impossible under the old system. But mostly, he continued, it was seeing how happy Zix is now, how confident, how respected. I realized that we weren't protecting our traditions by rejecting him, we were diminishing ourselves. Sarah nodded slowly. It takes courage to admit when you're wrong, especially about fundamental beliefs. Zix taught us that courage comes in many forms, Torix said. Not just the courage to breathe fire or fight battles, but the courage to be different, to challenge assumptions, to forgive those who hurt you. Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden commotion in the arena. Sarah looked down to see Zix gesturing excitedly at one of his displays, his voice carrying clearly through the arena's acoustics. It works, he was calling to his team. The interstellar communication relay is stable across 12 star systems. The implications hit Sarah immediately. Instantaneous communication across vast distances had been one of the galaxy's most elusive technological goals, if Zix had actually achieved it. Sarah, Zix's voice called up to her, you need to see this. Sarah activated the transport platform and materialized beside Zix's workstation. The displays showed a complex network of quantum entanglement relays stretching across multiple star systems, all maintaining stable communication links that should have been impossible according to current understanding of physics. How, Sarah asked, staring at the impossibly stable quantum connections. It's based on the same principles I used for the atmospheric processors, Zix explained, his excitement making him speak rapidly. Instead of fighting quantum decay, I found a way to use the natural fluctuations of spacetime itself to reinforce the entanglement. The longer the distance, the stronger the connection becomes. Zix, this is revolutionary, Sarah breathed. This will change everything. Trade, diplomacy, scientific collaboration, military coordination, every aspect of galactic civilization. That's not even the best part, Zix replied, his eyes shining with pride. Look at this. He activated another display, showing power consumption data for the communication network. Sarah's eyes widened as she processed the numbers. This is using less energy than a single colony's lighting system. Exactly. The network becomes more efficient as it grows larger. Add more relay points, and the entire system uses less power while providing better service. Sarah looked around at the assembled dragons, all of whom were staring at Zix with expressions of awe and admiration. These were the same dragons who had once called him useless, defective, worthless. Now they looked at him the way she had always known they should, as someone extraordinary. Zix, General Corax's voice boomed across the arena as he approached the workstation. The military council has a proposal for you. Zix straightened respectfully, though Sarah noted that he no longer cowered or trembled in the general's presence. What kind of proposal, sir? We want to offer you the position of Chief Technological Officer for all dragon colonies, Corax announced. Full authority over technological development and integration across our entire civilization. The arena fell silent. It was an unprecedented offer. No dragon so young had ever been given such responsibility, and certainly not one who had once been classified as defective. Zix considered the offer carefully. That's a tremendous honor, General, but I'm not sure I'm the right choice. What do you mean? Corax asked, clearly surprised by anything other than immediate acceptance. I mean that I'm not the only technology-intuitive dragon anymore, Zix replied, gesturing to his team. Flux understands quantum mechanics better than I do. Copper has insights into metallurgy that I can't match. Prism sees electromagnetic patterns that I can barely perceive. He paused, looking around at his colleagues with genuine respect. The future of dragon technology shouldn't depend on one individual, no matter how capable. It should be a collaborative effort that draws on all of our different strengths. Sarah felt a surge of pride. Zix had not only found his own worth, but he was now dedicated to helping others find theirs. Then what do you propose? General Corax asked. A Council of Technological Innovation, Zix replied without hesitation. Representatives from each specialty working together to advance dragon society. No single leader, but a collaborative approach that ensures everyone's abilities are valued and utilized. The general considered this proposal, and who would head this council? Zix smiled, an expression that transformed his entire face with confidence and joy. We would rotate leadership based on the projects we're working on. If we're developing quantum systems, Flux leads. If we're working on materials science, Copper leads. If we're designing electromagnetic interfaces, Prism leads. He paused, meeting Corax's gaze directly. True strength comes from recognizing that everyone has something valuable to contribute. Sarah watched this exchange with deep satisfaction. The small dragon who had once been told he was worthless was now proposing a governmental structure based on the fundamental value and dignity of every individual. It was exactly the kind of wisdom she had hoped to see emerge from his experiences. The council will consider your proposal, General Corax said formally, but Sarah could see approval in his eyes. In the meantime, your communication network needs to be demonstrated to the Galactic Council immediately. This technology will change the balance of power across known space. Actually, Zix said quietly, I think it will eliminate the balance of power. What do you mean? When every civilization has access to instantaneous communication with every other civilization, when information flows freely across all boundaries, when collaborative projects become as easy to coordinate as local ones. Zix's voice grew stronger as he explained his vision. Power stops being about control and starts being about contribution. Sarah stared at him, suddenly understanding the full scope of what he had accomplished. This wasn't just a technological innovation. It was a tool for galactic unity. You're going to make war obsolete, she whispered. I'm going to make isolation impossible, Zix corrected. When everyone can communicate with everyone else instantly, when ideas and innovations spread throughout the galaxy in real time, when the boundaries between civilizations become meaningless. He smiled broadly. How can you hate someone you're collaborating with every day? The implications crashed over Sarah like a wave. Zix hadn't just solved a technical problem. He had created a foundation for peace that could last for millennia. There's something else I want to show you, Zix said, leading Sarah to a quieter corner of the arena. Something personal. He activated a private display screen, showing a communication channel to Research Station Alpha. I never forgot what you told me about turning weaknesses into strengths, about how every species in the galaxy succeeded by embracing what made them different. The screen showed a bustling research facility where dozens of different species worked together on various projects. Sarah could see Centaurians collaborating with Aquatic Federation engineers, silicon-based entities sharing data with organic researchers, and in the center of it all, technology-intuitive dragons facilitating connections and solving problems that bridged the gaps between different forms of intelligence. "This is what I really wanted to build," Zix said softly. "Not just better technology, but better understanding. A place where every form of intelligence is valued, where differences are celebrated instead of feared." Sarah felt tears forming in her eyes as she watched species that had been suspicious of each other for centuries working together with easy familiarity. "Zix, this is beautiful." "It's the future," he replied simply. "And it started with a human who saw potential in a dragon that everyone else had given up on." Sarah looked at Zix, seeing not just the confident leader he had become, but the frightened child she had rescued from humiliation. The transformation was complete, but more than that, it was spreading throughout the galaxy. "You know," she said quietly, "when I first saw you on that testing platform, I thought I was saving one dragon. I never imagined I was helping to save galactic civilization." Zix's laugh was warm and genuine. "You weren't saving me, Sarah. You were teaching me to save myself." He paused, his expression growing serious. "And then you taught me to help others save themselves too." As if summoned by their conversation, General Korax approached with news that would change everything once again. "Zix," he announced, "the Galactic Council has reviewed your communication network and your proposal for interspecies collaboration. They're offering you something unprecedented." "What kind of offer?" Zix asked. "The position of Galactic Coordinator for Technological Development. Full authority to establish research stations throughout known space, with the goal of facilitating collaboration between all species for mutual benefit." Sarah gasped. It was a position that had never existed before because no single individual had ever commanded such universal respect and trust. "I accept," Zix said without hesitation, "on one condition." "Name it." Zix looked at Sarah, his eyes bright with gratitude and affection. "I want Dr. Sarah Chen as my co-coordinator. This started as a partnership between human intuition and dragon innovation. I think it should continue that way." Sarah felt her heart swell with pride and emotion. From rescuing a rejected dragon to coordinating galactic technological development, it had been quite a journey. "I accept," she said, matching Zix's confidence. As the ceremony concluded and dragons throughout the arena celebrated their transformation from an isolated, tradition-bound society to leaders of galactic innovation, Sarah reflected on the profound changes that had emerged from one simple act of compassion. She had seen potential in Zix when no one else could. He had risen to meet that potential and exceeded it beyond all imagination. Together, they had proven that worth was not determined by conformity to existing standards, but by the courage to define new ones. The galaxy would never be the same. And as Sarah watched Zix discussing plans for interstellar research colonies with representatives from dozens of different species, all of whom treated him with the respect and admiration he had always deserved, she knew it would be better for the change. The tiny dragon who had once been mocked as useless had become the architect of a new age of galactic cooperation, and the human who had believed in him had helped make it all possible. Some stories end with victory. This one ended with transformation, hope, and the boundless potential that emerges when intelligence is valued over conformity, when collaboration replaces competition, and when one person's belief in another changes the course of history. The dragon had risen indeed, and he had lifted the entire galaxy with him.